it's down here on the circle.
Okay.
And then there's a Starbucks as well. Yes, there are a couple of them.
Yep.
Anyway, good afternoon to you today is Thursday, right?
Correct.
My name is Jake Query. That is the voice of Jimmy Cook. You just heard Eddie Garrison and his cough as well. It is Query & Company and the very healthy version of it here on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan, a lot to talk about today, including the big topic will be that Colts game. Also, Pacers in action tonight. I got to get a water here. Hang on a second. Is this the final preseason game, Eddie?
Yes, final preseason game for the Pacers. Tonight against Charlotte. They play against in Detroit next Wednesday. That will be the regular season opener for the Indiana Pacers. They are 1-2 so far, although wins and losses don't really matter in preseason, about how the guys look on the court.
I'm curious.
I think that we are. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm curious to see how they incorporate the rotation tonight, because there's been talk from Coach Carlisle, and perhaps today or in the last 6 hours or so, he has reclarified his stance on that. But there was a thought going into it, Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that they would see more starters minutes and treat this kind of like what the NFL does with their second to last, or in this case, last preseason game, treated as more of a dress rehearsal. Is that still the outline going in that we would presume would occur for the Pacers?
Yeah, I would assume so. Now, I don't think they play all 4 quarters. I think the rotations will be similar to pretty much the first 3, because I don't know how close of attention you've paid to across the NBA lately, but Paul George has a knee injury.
Yep.
He suffered a hyperextension. And then Isaiah Hartenstein, who was a key free agent this past offseason, signed with the Oklahoma City Thunder, fractured his hand yesterday, so he's going to miss a little over a month. And I'm interested to see if Rick Carlisle still has the same plan in place, just because of some notable names getting hurt over the last 48, 72 hours.
Yeah, you don't want to get hurt in preseason. I mean, I know it's the Captain Obvious statement there, but nothing can wreck morale and cause frustration within a fan base like an injury in the preseason.
You know one thing that's funny? So I'm at the Pacer game the other night.
Okay.
And obviously in the preseason, you're not overly familiar with the bottom roster guys, right?
Sure. Especially because there's an expanded roster to some extent. You're going to see names that will likely be at the G League or not be on the roster at all.
And you're also looking at who's on two-way contracts, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this guy checks in the game, and I'm with my buddy Byron, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I actually know this guy's I have a family friend whose kids grew up with this guy." And I'm like, I've never heard of this guy, and I'm just assuming that, okay, he's getting some 10-day contract, and it's kind of fun for him. And then I look it up, and I'm like, oh, well, he's played a couple places and been around a little bit and played collegiately at Syracuse. Big program. Cole Swider, am I saying the last name correctly there, Eddie?
Yes.
And pretty decent outside shooter. Has kind of a good feel for the game. A little bit bigger guy.
Stops with Miami and L.A.
Yeah, nothing jumps out at you as wow, blows you away. But, doesn't look totally lost out there or whatever else. Anyway, he hit a couple of shots from the outside. Had a pretty good feel for what was going on. And I thought, well, this is fun for him, and hopefully he'll get a couple of T-shirts along the way.
Hopefully he's got the Jake Query swag bag ready to go.
100%, right? And then they make a move where Kendall Brown is released, and it looks like he has a legitimate shot of rounding out the roster, right? And, that doesn't mean he's going to get much playing time, but goes to show, Jimmy, if you can shoot from the outside, you got a chance.
Yeah, especially in this league. With where the NBA is today, the pace of play, especially the pace that the Pacers want to go at, you can utilize any type of healthy bodies that can be consistent from beyond the arc. And maybe this is, I haven't looked at the details with what they would utilize Swider for, if it is splitting time between the G League or not. In terms of his career, it's only been, like I said, 3 seasons in, or this is his 3rd season, and both those stops were minimal action within the Lakers and the Heat. So, yeah, in today's NBA, if you are undersized, or if you are a guard especially, trying to find time in a rotation, outside of playing defense, the biggest key that can get you on the floor is being able to be consistent from beyond the arc.
Now, I know what you did last night. You probably watched baseball, right?
I did watch some baseball. It wasn't as entertaining of a game in terms of highly competitive as the others, but I did watch Dodgers and Mets.
I enjoyed making money last night. That was nice.
Wait, you had the over-under was 8, right?
7.5.
Eddie got it at 7.5.
What was the final score?
8-0.
I saw it was 7-0 at one point, but yes.
Yep.
And Shohei Ohtani got things going, right? I mean, not
A
got
little
things
bit.
going,
He
but
broke
I'm saying,
it open. He absolutely broke it open. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
he
right.
broke
I'm
it
saying
open.
for himself.
He mean independently, yes.
He got himself
yeah,
going.
Yeah.
I saw because I went last night. Michael Young, track dude Michael Young, who I think many people are familiar with from a radio standpoint, who does the Indy 500, IndyCar broadcast, does the Indy 500 with myself and the other guys on the crew. He is a native of Delphus, Ohio. I've never been to Delphus, Ohio. I've only heard it mentioned a billion times by Michael because he's the pride of Delphus, Ohio. His mother, Michael's mother, passed away unexpectedly on Saturday. And when I say unexpectedly, I mean, his parents were at home and, his father was asking if his mom wanted a cup of coffee or whatever and went in the room and she had passed. So at any rate, that's obviously, terrible. And so Mark Janes, myself, and Nick Yeoman drove to Delphus, Ohio last night for the services, the calling for Michael's mother, and we went to this town of 6,000 people in the whole town, I think. Tiny town and, small town America. And Michael was in good spirits, that met his dad and met the whole family and his high school friends and things like that. So that was, I'm glad that we went for that, even though obviously the circumstances you're not glad for. But was happy to be able to go and pay our respects to Michael's mother. But my point being, didn't get to see and actively follow what was going on in the world of sports last night, and only saw the baseball score and just saw the highlight that said Shohei Ohtani hits a moonshot, and then I saw the clip of it, and I thought, and at first I thought, I didn't realize it was the upper deck.
It was nuts.
And I'm like, okay, so he hit one in the right field, whatever. And then I looked closer, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that was a moonshot, right?
Yeah.
Pretty legitimate home run. Now, it also looked to me, you guys tell me if I'm wrong.
Eddie's probably the better one for this. I didn't watch pitch by pitch like Eddie would have, but I did see the play live.
It looked like there were a lot of empty seats where he hit it.
Well, by that point, it was pretty well out of hand.
It was 4-0.
Like,
and then
there was no offense.
Yeah, it was 4-0 in the seventh inning, and then I don't think you're expecting to get a ball when you're in, the middle of the third deck up in right field.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, like, it looked to me, I'm like, wow, like I would have guessed it's like packed wall-to-wall people, but
I had thought, and granted, I didn't, wasn't doing head counts at first pitch, but as that game wore on and it was pretty clear the Mets just couldn't get anything going offensively, that it started to peter out, and then Ohtani's blast was kind of the last nail in the coffin.
What number jersey are we on today? You said you have 17 Yankee shirts? Do you wear it only on game days or the whole playoffs?
Yeah, so I only wear the jerseys on game days, and only playoff game days, in fact, just because there's so many baseball games, and I'm not insane, guys. Come on. No, this is
what does your wife think of that? Like, is she okay with the entire wardrobe being sports related?
I mean, we
has she told you to grow up yet?
We're married and created life, so
Eddie
clearly.
said it. Thank you, Eddie. What was that again?
Has she told you to grow up yet?
No, she loves me for who I am.
Okay.
Eddie went there. I didn't go there.
Fine.
Eddie went there.
Eddie can
for
go
what it's worth.
Yeah, see,
Eddie can go wherever he wants.
I'm not afraid to just straightforward and ask the question, Jake. I don't like to beat around the bush.
Totally fine. No, Haley fully embraces it. She thinks I'm insane, but that's why she loves me. So
now is this a specific player jersey?
I would hope so. I mean, Chance was born a couple months ago. I would hope that was out of love.
Here is the ultimate question. So Jimmy today is wearing a New York Yankee jersey. It is a road jersey.
It is.
But it looks like it may be. Now, I don't want you to say whose it is.
Okay.
I need you to stand up and show us the number on the back and see if either one of us can tell you what player it is.
Just by the number?
Yes.
Okay, he definitely can, but I'll do it. That's fine.
Okay. So Jimmy is now standing up. 27. I'm going to guess. My first guess is this is a retired player?
Active player.
Active.
I'll go with Anthony Rizzo.
It's a good guess, but no.
Oh, wait. Giancarlo Stanton.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Bingo.
sorry. I should have known that. What number was Mariano Rivera?
42.
I should have known that. He was 40. Yeah, he was the last player to wear it.
Yes.
Right when Jackie.
They retired Jackie Robinson during his career.
Correct.
And
he was the last player to wear it. No,
correct.
Yeah, I did know that.
Yep.
Okay. See, I'm not a total idiot.
I've never thought that about you.
Bob Costas approves of your wardrobe today, I can tell you.
Bob Costas thought it was a Mariano Rivera jersey. He thought it was a Goose Gossett jersey, actually.
No, actually, Bob Costas saw it and immediately thought of the roster of the 27 Yankees and then wanted to go player by player with the batting average of it, right? Okay, so big show lined up today, by the way. We're going to talk to the guy that's going to be on the mic for the Colts and the Dolphins coming up on Sunday. Correct, Eddie?
Yeah, that's right. Kevin Cougler, he is on the call on Fox. He also does some Big Ten action as well, a lot of college football and basketball for Kevin, and I'll talk to him at 1 o'clock.
Rough one, by the way, last weekend for Marian in terms of football, Marian University. But they have homecoming coming on Saturday, trying to get back on to the winning side. They're 4-1, so it's not like that they but with Indiana Wesleyan coming in and dropping 77 on them, trying to rebound from that. And Ted Karras, the head coach of the Knights, going to join us at 1:30 today. I'll be emceeing, actually, an event introducing their men's and women's basketball coaches to the fan base on Saturday before the game. So look forward to that. Ted Karras at 1:30 today. Matt Taylor will join us on the program as well.
Is that a little like Marian Hysterics type deal?
What's that?
Is it like a Marian Hysterics type deal?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And I'm the hype man.
Nice.
Hopefully I'm not still coughing. Matt Taylor going to join us 2 o'clock today, the voice of the Colts. A reminder, by the way, now through the end of the year, anybody who belongs to a monthly car wash program, so you have the little sticker in your window or maybe on your license plate that you do the unlimited car washes, if you have that, you are going to save big at Jiffy Lube. Just drive in when you go to Jiffy Lube and let the Jiffy Lube team member know, hey, you know what? I'm part of a car wash program. And they're going to say, well, you care about the outside of your car. Clearly, you are taking care of the underside of the hood as well, because you're going to get $20 off a signature service oil change and a free tire rotation at Jiffy Lube. Big savings from your trusted one-stop shop for all your vehicle maintenance where you never need an appointment. We're talking about Jiffy Lube and the fine work that they do. $20 off the oil change, free tire rotation, so long as you are a member of any of the Car Wash Unlimited programs. All right, when we come back, yesterday we talked about the injury report for the Colts, but now we're starting to get into that nitty-gritty of getting a better idea of who's in and who's out on Sunday. That discussion, other side. Query & Company on a Thursday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. So Jonathan Taylor has spoken about whether or not he is going to push it to try to get out onto the playing field with that high ankle sprain.
Thank you.
Well done, Eddie.
I'm glad you picked up on that, Jake. Thanks.
I do what I can. See, that's the kind of symmetry we have, Eddie.
That's right.
We just had actually
a bonding experience.
We did. We had a bonding experience where telepathically you and I had this connection because you said out loud what I didn't want to say when you asked Jimmy if his wife has told him to grow up. And I thought to myself, well, hallelujah, right? I didn't want to go there because to each his own, and Jimmy's a grown man, right? He's a father. I mean, he's already led clearly a life of greater accepted responsibility than I've ever tried to endure. So in that regard, who am I to throw stones? But, I'll let you fall on that sword for me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Feeling the love today, guys.
I am a team player, Jake. I think we've established that time and time again. I constantly get beat on, and I take it. I take all the punches.
I don't think you do.
Every single punch is directed at me, and I take it.
Well, that's because you have, your massive head provides armor for you.
I was just going to say, it's not necessarily that anything is designed to go towards you, Eddie, but it's just the fact that you catch a lot of strays based on the size of that melon, right?
And I'm used to it. Former catcher, always catching things. So
okay, that's fair.
He's blocking, he's protecting the plate, he's doing a great job.
So James Boyd, our friend who you hear on this program and a writer for The Athletic, just posted on the X Twitter a couple of sound clips from Jonathan Taylor in talking to Taylor about upcoming for preparations for Miami. First thing that we're going to hear from here, James Boyd simply asking Jonathan Taylor essentially flat out, are you going to practice today? Here's Taylor.
Well, no, I still got to go do some work in there just to go see how I'm feeling, to see if we can even attempt to go out there and try to do my job, for my teammates.
Okay, so basically I've got to be evaluated, and no, there's probably not any chance I'm going to be out on the practice field because there's still too many steps to go to. But the question then for Jonathan Taylor becomes, what exactly from the time of this injury was the anticipated timeline that he would not be on the field?
Well, once they said high ankles, I know high ankles are usually 4 to 6, but, me attacking different rehabs and injuries, I'm like, man, there's no way. So I just got to do everything in my power to keep chopping that down each and every single day.
Again, a lot of coach speak here. I get it, right? I get it. Last question then becomes, if they thought it was going to be 4 to 6 and he knew going into it what that meant, was going on the IR, because Jimmy, give for us again on the IR, because it used to be if you went on IR, boom, your year was done.
Sure.
But we now know that you are allowed, I believe it's 8. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that figure's right. You have 8 short-term IR spots. It's basically you can put a player on IR and they could be there they have to be there at least 4 weeks before they can be reactivated. And then there is a 21-day practice window that you can at some point. Eddie, correct me on that part. That's the part that always confuses me. That 21-day practice window.
I know semantically I'm getting into the weeds here, but it's 4 games, not 4 weeks. Because Tua, for example, this would be he'd be eligible if it was 4 weeks, but this is their
minimum
fourth game.
4 games. Yeah, sure, correct.
But then once you open that 21-day practice window, he has to be activated off injured reserve, and if he's not, then he is moved to season-ending injured reserve.
Yep.
Okay. So the question for Jonathan Taylor, was any of that up for discussion?
I never like to throw that around because, especially being on PUP last year, it's definitely not a place you don't want to be if you don't have to be there. So if you feel as though hey, I feel like with the training staff, we can potentially avoid that, and that's always a positive.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get where he's coming from, because what he had to deal with last year and the physically unable to perform list, what he references there, is just as much of a headache as is the IR. But for a team that we believe still has playoff aspirations, even if they're focused on Anthony Richardson's development, if you put him on IR right now, but let's say he's pretty close to being back, he's at 60% or 70% to where he wants to be, well, now he has to miss those 4 games, and that, Jake, is in the middle of their biggest stretch of the season, where you're losing him for games against Houston, where you're losing him for games against the Bills and against the Jets. It would be the Texans, the Vikings, the Bills, and the Jets would be the 4 games. Well, let me rephrase that. If they did it today, it would be the Dolphins, the Texans, the Vikings, and the Bills. But that's still right at the beginning of that onslaught of games where we've talked about they need to be, if they win against Miami, I think they need to go get 2 wins over that 5-game stretch between October 27th and November 4th, or November 24th. that features Houston, Minnesota, Buffalo, the Jets, and the Lions. If you want to be serious about your playoff aspirations, you need at least 2 there. And if you're wrong about Jonathan Taylor and put him on IR where he has to miss 4 games over that stretch, that's basically tying a hand behind your back, right? Like, you look at the offensive deficits they would be facing if you move one of your biggest pieces off the board. We can talk all we want about the burst of Tyler Goodson or what Trey Sermon does or does not do. They're a massive step back offensively for what Jonathan Taylor brings to the table, which is why you can't afford to make that IR decision unless you were firmly confident he would have no chance of going anytime over the next 4 games.
You know, it's interesting. Trey Sermon can move the chain a little bit if you can get him maybe just like around the edge or, you know, between the tackles if there's a big hole. You know, he'll get you 5-6 yards, right? I mean, he's a competent back, right? Goodson, I think, can do a better job catching a flare pass, has a little more burst between the tackles, and in open space, in a straight line speed, you know, we saw that he has that capability. But it's limited situations where those guys truly become like a threat if you're a defense.
And nobody respects them the way they do Taylor.
Well, and Taylor is a threat the second that he is out there
Correct.
lined
Exactly.
up.
Yes.
Because you don't know where he is going to hit you from. Now, he is not the receiving back, but it doesn't matter because his ability, what Taylor does that the other two cannot do, Sermon does a nice job of just kind of moving forward with, again, basically straight ahead run. Okay, you can get him around the corner a little bit. He's okay. Goodson, I think, has good speed and can develop speed. Taylor has the ability to almost be the combination of the two. His ability to shift and immediately redirect and take off, it terrifies defenses the entire time.
It's what makes him a one-of-one running back around the National Football League, and it's why if you take him off the board and you're talking about Anthony Richardson's development, I don't care which school of thought you subscribe to, the idea of having a complementary piece like Jonathan Taylor to Anthony Richardson's passing game is beneficial to his development. If you have to lose him for any stretch of time, you're hampering the degree at which defenses can key and make life more difficult on Anthony Richardson than it needs to be.
Have you been to West Virginia?
Passed through, but never been there regularly.
Eddie, have you ever been to West Virginia?
Negative, Ghost Rider.
West Virginia, which when I someday do my blog of the 50 U.S. states, since I've been to all 50 of them, and I rank them 50-1.
Congratulations.
Thank you. West Virginia is one of, like, probably 3 that I would list is extremely, extremely underrated. Absolutely beautiful. But there's a connection between West Virginia and the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm not talking about the fact that Pat McAfee played there. There is a connection between West Virginia and the Colts, and it's very pertinent here coming up between now and, say, the holidays. And I'll tell you what it is on the other side. And then again, Kevin Cougler, who's going to be calling the game for the Colts, going to join us about 20 minutes from now. If one is to visit the website for the state of West Virginia or just West Virginia in general, I'm telling you, West Virginia is absolutely beautiful. And I like the people there. I like everything about West Virginia. But, Jimmy, when you think West Virginia and the tourism of the state of West Virginia, what's the first or second thing? Well, give me a couple things that come to mind other than the Mountaineers and Randy Moss playing at Marshall and et cetera.
I mean, I think mountainous views. I think forests. I think country roads.
Okay.
I think many of what John Denver's singing about right there.
Eddie, anything that jumps to mind for you?
I've never been there, Jake, so no.
West Virginia is home to the highest density of whitewater rafting runs in the country.
Have you been before?
World-class rapids included in the top 10 of USA Today. What's
Have
that?
you done 50?
Have you? No. Let me rephrase that. I know what you thought I was asking. Let me clarify that for the
Have I
audience.
done whitewater
'Cause I've
rafting?
been. Have you gone whitewater rafting before?
I have not, but you have?
I have. In
Okay.
Tennessee, it was a wild time.
So here's the thing. When you are whitewater rafting, now I've done it at Kings Island.
Sure.
I've been on the ride at Kings Island. You know when you're going along and you're kind of, and everybody's just enjoying it and whatever else, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're about to take on some pretty treacherous water and things start picking up a little bit.
Yep.
And you can see that the water is indeed becoming white, right? And the rocks are ahead of you and you're like, hold on. Everybody hold on. We're about to get wet, and it's about to get treacherous here, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right now. The Colts have the Miami Dolphins coming to town on Sunday. Right now, everybody in the raft is taking a selfie, right?
Putting on the gram, baby. Let's go.
They're cruising along, and they're like, oh, it's just beautiful. Look at the scenery around. It's gorgeous. We're right here at Lucas Oil Stadium. We're just floating down Capitol. Oh, look, they're doing something. They're putting bronze cleaner on the top of the Capitol building, and it's all wrapped right now. The dome of the Capitol building's wrapped, but isn't that lovely? And it's beautiful. Oh, and if you look to the left, you can see that they've got Monument Circle still sealed off because they're still redoing the steps for the 9th straight year. That's
Well, they're
wonderful.
redoing the other steps this time, Jake. They got the other ones fixed. Now they're fixing the.
I don't know that they fixed the north side, have they?
I don't know.
But that's lovely as you go down Capitol. Then you go a little bit further, and you're like, oh, look, there's the Arts Garden where there used to be an active mall. It's beautiful. And you keep going. But you realize as you're getting closer, like, wait a minute, like the water it's getting rapid, right? The water's getting rapid. Listen to this. After this game against the Dolphins, at Houston, at Minnesota, who's going to get their first loss this week.
Minnesota.
That was well done, Eddie. Buffalo.
Any more than that, or is it just that one?
Just that one.
Okay.
At the Jets, which, I mean, that's kind of a coin flip as to whether or not that's Detroit at home. I mean, and then you have and then you go at New England, which theoretically you should be able to take care of business if you're healthy, and then you have the bye week. That's what I'm getting at, Jimmy, is obviously, I'm not saying it's the National Football League. I get that you have to take serious every opponent. But Miami, in comparison to the others, does feel like the game that you should get. And then it's about to get real.
Yeah, I mean, to go into the weeds of whitewater rafting, this is like your level 1, like just basic calm waters, like nothing too challenging, the Miami game. And then you really get into like level 4 of unpredictability and like craziness. And as you mentioned, you can really see the whitewater going. That's what the next stretch of the schedule
Who
is.
did you go rafting with?
This is back in 2005. We did a big family trip, the entire Cook extended family. We got a cabin in Tennessee, and we went on Pigeon Forge.
And how long was the raft ride?
I think 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe.
That's all?
Because there were some areas that were like, you got to remember this aspect of it, because I've seen pictures and videos of it since, but I was 10 when we went, so like the memory of all of it isn't as clear as it was, at the time. But we actually had a picture resurface the other day, so the story came back up. We had family members get tossed out of one of the rafts, not the raft I was particularly in. Our instructor was like, hey, there's a path we really don't want to have to go on, so we're going to try to avoid it. And then another one of our family members, their boat flipped, and so we were forced down the more treacherous path, and that is basically like what the Colts schedule is going to be down this stretch. But there is
was
light.
it fun? Was it fun?
I mean, it was exhilarating because, again, I'm not having to do much. I have a paddle, but I'm in the front.
You get tossed around a lot? Do you have like a little chair?
Get tossed and bumped. I mean, you're trying to pin your legs within the edges of the raft, especially at my age, being 10 at the time. You don't want to get flung out of there, right?
Do you get wet?
Yes, you do get wet for certain.
All the way through, right?
Yeah.
Because we went on the whitewater rafting ride at Kings Island once, which I'm sure is very similar, and made the mistake of doing that first. We got to Kings Island, we're like, we'll do that.
That's tough.
That's tough.
You know why that was tough, right?
Because then you're wet the rest of the day.
It was probably blazing hot outside, and you're all wet, so now you're just soaking up all that heat, and you're miserable.
This was a middle school mistake.
Oh.
Wore jeans.
Oh, man.
So wet jeans the rest of the day.
That's no bueno.
I will simply say it was not long after that when I realized the miracle that is Gold Bond. Gold Bond medicated powder. Now, if you're really brave,
did you carry that on you to this day?
What's that?
Do you carry that with you to this day? Now
I have a buddy. True story. I have a buddy who I'm not saying any names. Okay,
it's kind of you,
but he's one of the 2 members of my Buffalo Sabre fan club. Tough loss last night, 6-5 overtime to the Penguins. But
they came back and won?
Or
to tie it?
It was 6-5.
Oh, wow.
They lost in overtime. Thank you, Eddie. So,
do you have NHL Pass, by the way?
What's
that? I'm serious question.
It was on the telly last night.
Oh,
it's free for like the first
okay, nice.
10 games, whatever. They rope you in is what they do.
You could always go high seas, too, if you were interested in it.
So my buddy goes golfing with his now father-in-law, but at the time, father of his girlfriend. He and his now wife go back to her hometown to visit the parents once they're getting serious. He goes golfing. Gets a little chafing in the nether regions, right? Comes back. They're going to go out to dinner, and so he's showering in future in-laws' bathroom. And he looks and is like, I wonder if there's any chance that her dad has Gold Bond. All the dad had was Gold Bond mentholated foot powder, which is like 7 times strength.
Oh, no.
He goes ahead and decides to
rolls the dice, baby.
Apply it to the nether regions. And then, and I kid you not, are you ready? Falls backwards, grabs a hold of the sink, and crashes it. To which everything falls off that like pulls down, and like stuff comes crashing out of the medicine cabinet, and he's laying on the ground, and the jewels are ablaze, and there's powder everywhere, and the smell of menthol smell in the air, kind of like me with the cough drops today. And they come in and they're like, "Oh my gosh, is everything okay?" And now that's his father-in-law. And
that's a tough one to talk your way out of.
It is, but it's a story that they still tell, I'm sure, to this day. All right, so there's going to be a story that's going to take place at Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. Maybe it's one that we'll talk about for a long time, but the guy that's going to talk about it while it's happening is Kevin Cougler, and he joins us next. Now, Jimmy, I'm not going to lie to you. Your life does, as a guy, take a there are literally two eras of a man's life.
Sure.
PGB and actually PRGB, POGB. That's pre-gold bond and post-gold bond. Once you recognize and understand and experience the power of the gold bond medicated powder, it's life-changing.
Is it a gateway drug, would you say, to Skechers? Like, is that where we're at there? Or New Balance, even though they're trying to get younger? Like, is that where we're at with that?
Well,
that's in the old man's tool.
Are you still in pre-gold bond era of your life?
I've used baby powder before, but I don't regularly have it on hand. So I'm still I would say.
Okay. All I got to say is the gold bond medicated powder will absolutely change your life. I'm just telling you.
Sure.
There's going to be, without getting into intimate detail, there's going to be a situation in your life where all of a sudden you're going to be walking around and your legs are going to look a little bit like Yosemite Sam. And then you're going to realize the brilliance and the master of it. And you're like, wait a minute, where has this been all my life?
I change advertising demos at that point too. I feel like people like Fox and others that are trying to, obtain my dollars, it changes at that point.
You're absolutely in the window right now. You're getting there. Believe me. It just depends on the humidity in terms of situations. Our next guest joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line may be able to double dip this weekend. Now, a couple of things that I can tie in with Kevin Cougler here. Number one, I used to always know when Mark Malone was doing games on radio because 25 different people would text me and go, "Are you on the radio right now?" And then I listened to Mark Malone and I'm like, that dude does kind of sound like me. But I have the head cold now, so that might not be as applicable. But also Kevin might be able to double dip because he's a graduate of the University of Nebraska who is at Indiana on Saturday. Then, of course, Colts and Dolphins on Sunday. Kevin joins us on the show now. Kevin, will you get a chance to go down and watch the sold-out game between Indiana and Nebraska?
I did think about it, but I feel like I probably need to invest my time with my crew on Saturday. We have meetings and all that good stuff, but it's a big game now. Who would have ever thought Nebraska, Indiana would be a critical game for playoff stuff and Big Ten stuff in mid-October, but here we are in this new world of college football.
I mean, it's pretty cool. And you know what, Kevin, before we get to the Colts, I'll say this. Obviously from Indiana's standpoint, there's optimism with Curt Cignetti, but it's good to it's also good because Nebraska is one of those programs that just college football is better when Nebraska is relevant and when Nebraska is being typical Nebraska. And I do think Matt Rule is a guy that can get them back there.
He's got a lot of optimism built in the Nebraska fan base. He's done a lot of things right. Now, I don't know that Coach Cignetti's build is expected, the timing of this, although I guess that's what he's done pretty much everywhere else he's been. But there is a lot of optimism around Nebraska. Matt Rule's done everything right. Now it's just a matter of breaking the longest streak among power conference schools of getting to a bowl. That's the next step. They haven't been to a bowl in 7 or 8 years for Nebraska, which used to be a birthright. You just assumed it was what bowl are you going to when the season started, and now everybody's saved up their money for almost a decade. So if they go to any bowl, you can expect Husker people to travel. But this will be a fun one this weekend, and I think it'll be a good matchup between the two schools. And you know what? I'm excited for the folks in Bloomington, too, because this, I'm sure, was a bit of a surprise to them, waiting for Coach Woodson to get onto the court with his team. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, we got to pay attention to football? All right, let's do that, too.
Well, again, it's kind of like Nebraska basketball, right, where all of a sudden the basketball program, people are like, whoa, this is interesting to carry us through the football season, and, opposite side of that in terms of in Bloomington. But, all right, let's get to Sunday's matchup. This is an intriguing game between the Colts and Dolphins, kind of because you don't know which version of each is going to be represented. Is that a fair assessment of how you kind of look at it going into it and previewing it and getting ready for it for your work on Saturday for the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment because there's so much flux with the two lineups, and you really don't. For example, watching the Colts the last couple of weeks, how much from what I've seen from them will we actually see with Anthony Richardson, assuming he's back at the quarterback spot? Joe Flacco's game plan is going to be different than Anthony Richardson's game plan. What about Miami? A bye week with Huntley now back at quarterback again. How much more of the offense is available to him, able to utilize? Does he get Devon Achane back to help him out from a running game standpoint? They leaned on that run game 2 weeks ago against the Patriots, but that's the Patriots, who I don't think are very good, and I think they're going to be facing a stiffer test, even though the Colts have struggled at times on defense, especially against the run. So it's going to be interesting because, like you said, I just am not sure what teams we're going to see. And I guess we'll get more clarity as we get closer to the weekend as to who's going to play and are they going to be able to fully assert themselves like a Achane or a Jonathan Taylor out there.
Kevin, it's funny you bring up the injury elements because for both sides, there's areas where you don't know, as you outlined there, what kind of roster or what kind of starters are even going to be available for both these teams. Looking Colts defensively, Dolphins offensively. For the Colts, many injuries up front. Their goal this year was to be able to win in the trenches, generate pressure that way. They're at 9.5 quarters without a single sack. And then you mentioned Tyler Huntley. Mike McDaniel's hoping that a second week and a bye week in between is enough to get him more acclimated, more comfortable with an offense that has a lot of playmakers with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, et cetera. Regardless of Achane, let's say that he doesn't go, but it's that core with Huntley against this Colts front that is struggling to stay healthy and struggling to generate pressure. How do the Colts go about doing that? How do they make life difficult for Huntley and make the Dolphins look like the team that they've looked like without Tua the last couple weeks?
Well, the first thing they have to do is keep the Dolphins from running the football, because I got to believe if you're Mike McDaniel coming off a bye and you look at what the Colts have done or haven't done against the run this year, you've got to figure out a way to establish the run. People look at this Dolphins team and they think, oh, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua last year, this is an air-it-out team, and they're not afraid to throw the ball. But they averaged over 5 yards per carry. They led the league in yards per carry rushing last season. So that's kind of Mike McDaniel's roots, coming from that San Francisco system where they weren't afraid to run the football at any given time, even with Jimmy Garoppolo throwing the ball all over the lot for a while as he did at quarterback. I do think you've got to lean on that run game if you're Miami, because, look, if I'm the Colts, I look at the offensive line of the Dolphins, which has given up 10 sacks over the last 3 games, and I think maybe we can apply a little pressure. Maybe we can confuse Tyler Huntley with some looks as he's trying to figure out where he's supposed to go in an offense that has a lot of verbiage and a lot of conversation. Can we confuse things on the back end and throw a little bit of a wrench into Huntley's plans as he's trying to figure out where his players are supposed to go? Can the Colts be in places he doesn't expect them to be? And look, if you're the Colts, you look at Tyreek Hill, you look at Jalen Waddle and say, let's get rid of these guys. And if Odell Beckham Jr. and Braxton Berrios and Jonnu Smith are the guys that beat you, so be it. But you're not going to let those 2 superstar wide receivers finally get on track in this game.
Kevin, you obviously see all teams in the NFL. As a matter of fact, you're going to see a lot of them here in the next couple of nights because you're in New Orleans for Denver, New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken, tonight for Westwood 1. After you're here in Indy on Sunday, then on Monday, you're going to have Chargers and Cardinals for Westwood 1 for Monday Night Football. So you see a wide array. I'm curious of this in terms of the national perspective. If you were to play word association, when you think of the Indianapolis Colts and their level of competitiveness, their roster, etc., give me the 2 or 3 teams in the league that you feel like they're living in the same neighborhood with.
I would, on the roster side of things, I would have at the beginning of the year said teams like the Jaguars, but the Jags have been a significant disappointment from the standpoint of being able to actually finish things off. And I thought those were very similar rosters to them. I would say that before the trade for Devontae Adams, you would probably put them in a comparable position, quarterback notwithstanding, with the New York Jets. I thought those were 2 very comparable teams in the AFC. I don't know that I would say that with the second superstar, so to speak, wide receiver that they've added, although it remains to be seen how he will mesh. But I do think the other word that comes up as I've been reading about the Colts and studying them this week is resilience. I mean, this is a team that's been without arguably one of the best backs in the league, been without their top quarterback, and yet still figured out a way to go 3-3 and stay very much in the thick of things. And I mean, I know you guys know it in Indy, but there are a lot of people nationally that if I walked up to them tonight and said, hey, if the season ended today, and if it ended after 6 games, that would be a giant surprise. But if it ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. Nobody seems to know that outside of your area. And I think that's a credit to what Joe Flacco has been able to do, kind of putting a steady hand on the wheel like he did last year with the Browns. We had a ton of Browns games last year when the Joe Flacco experience began, and he did the same thing. He was a steady hand on the wheel when they needed somebody to kind of right the ship, and he's doing the same thing and has done the same thing with the Colts.
What are your impressions and your colleagues' impressions to this point of Anthony Richardson?
I would honestly say I don't think that the volume of work is enough to make a real judgment on it. I mean, you're talking about a guy who had 4 starts in his rookie year and then is out. And you're talking about a guy who's been banged up this year and has been out. So I want to see him string together a lengthy array of games. Look, the interception numbers are too high. Everybody knows that. You cannot turn the ball over in this league consistently and expect to win. That's just not something that you can do, and I'm sure that's been a great topic for Colts fans this week, that Flacco's only had the 1 pick and 7 touchdowns as the debate rages as to whether or not you stay with the old veteran or you go back to the young quarterback. But from what I have seen from him, there's clearly upside there. It's just a matter of, does he get enough consistent reps, game action, to develop into the kind of NFL quarterback that the Colts are certainly hoping he will over the course of time.
And, Kevin, doesn't it kind of feel like one of the burning questions, and this is probably true. Kevin Cougler is our guest, by the way, on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. I would assume that this is true for a lot of franchises, and that is, when is the point where if a quarterback, either because of his play or his availability has been inconsistent, how long do you give it before you make the determination that inconsistency is the only consistency that guy represents?
Yeah, I think you have during his rookie contract. I think that's when you have to make the decision, because everybody has to make that call as to whether or not they're going to reward a quarterback with that second contract. And Josh Rosen changed the entire quarterback world for GMs, for front offices, and everybody else, because the Cardinals so many years ago cut bait on him right away and said, that's not our guy. We're going to eat that first-round pick, and we're going to move on, and we're going to try over again. So I think that sort of legitimized the idea of, hey, you don't have to ride with this guy unless you really know he's going to be the guy. And I think that decision has to be made before you get to the point where you have that second contract coming up. If you cannot get to it by the time that second contract comes up, well, then you probably have your answer right there, even if you're not willing to have that answer. I just think that's going to be the big determination from here on with any young quarterback. Can they get it done within the realm of that rookie contract? And you see it with guys like Daniels in Washington, for example, and you're starting to see it with Caleb Williams in Chicago. Young guys who are getting their feet wet right away and are able to then build on that consistency. And those two young quarterbacks are making life rough, quite honestly, for other young quarterbacks who are a little slower to get started.
Fox Sports' Kevin Cougler is our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He'll be on the call for Fox of Colts Dolphins this Sunday. Last year, Kevin, there was a lot of discussion about the lack of weapons and the lack of talent outside of Michael Pittman Jr. in this Colts wide receiver room. And over the course of the back end of last season to this offseason, you've seen established roles now. Josh Downs is somebody that can take pressure off of, regardless of who's under center, Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson. You've started to see Alec Pierce be the deep threat that they drafted him to be, and Michael Pittman Jr., even if you want to tier him below some other wide receiver ones, he's clearly a number one option in this offense. Jake mentioned how much NFL you see on a weekly basis. When you look at this Colts receiving core, how does it stack up, and do you view it in the same light that some of us do as a massive improvement from where it was a year ago?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Look, it's difficult to have two superstar receivers like the Dolphins do. And it's difficult to keep two superstar receivers like the Dolphins do. The norm is you have a number one receiver, and then you try to find complementary guys that go around him. And I think Downs and Pierce are much more than complementary guys because they each have their own individual roles that fit into this offense. No, I think that's one of the major strengths of this team is you've got three legitimate wide receivers on this Colts roster that do different things but can produce for you in a big moment. And there just aren't a lot of teams around the league that have that. Look tonight, for example, at the New Orleans Saints. I have no idea who's going to catch a pass tonight for the Saints. Chris Olave is out. Rashid Shaheed is hurt. They don't have anybody else. I mean, they're going to probably be bringing up Equanimeous St. Brown from a practice squad. I mean, you're looking at teams that are trying to cobble together anybody to catch a pass. And the Colts are blessed with three guys who not only can catch a pass, but can all do it in very different and key ways. I mean, look, Michael Pittman's, as Joe Flacco says, one of the toughest guys he ever played with. We saw it last week. And Alec Pierce has been a revelation with the deep ball. And you've got to have somebody that can take the lid off, and he's that guy. And then Josh Downs has just been as steady as it comes really since midway through his rookie season when he caught fire and hasn't really seemed to let up. I mean, I'm impressed a lot with that wide receiver core. You get Taylor back as a running option for this team, and Richardson healthy to be a running and throwing option as well. And there's a lot of upside with this Colts offense.
Kevin, when you go around, people may not realize this, but when you are on these broadcasts, you guys get a chance to sit down and talk to the teams kind of, as part of your homework, as you talked about on Saturday in particular, so that you can reference different things over the course of a broadcast. Aside from the quarterback position, which is the obvious answer here, what would you say is the most common theme when you talk to teams that as the year goes on is the area that they still are having the hardest time trying to find an identity and figure out where they are strong? What is the one enigma that is the most common area for NFL teams in trying to build their roster?
I think it's the old adage that has been the case since football formed, and that's making sure you're strong up front on both sides, the offensive and defensive line. And I think every single coach on one of those lines has a concern somewhere that they don't have enough of whatever it is. They don't have enough muscle inside to be able to manage a run game. They don't have enough off the edge to create a pass rush without blitzing guys. They don't have guys on the left or right tackle spot that can protect their quarterback adequately. They don't have enough in the middle of that offensive line to prevent the opponents from shutting down that run game between the tackles. That is the one thing that no matter what coach you talk to, and I don't care what team, no coach is ever completely satisfied with both of those units at the same time. I don't know if I've ever spoken to a coach who's like, yeah, you know what, our offensive and defensive lines are great. I wouldn't change a thing. This is exactly what I want, and I'm really happy with it. There's always something, because those guys are hard to find, and really good ones are hard to find. Consistent ones are hard to find. And as you mentioned, availability is sometimes hard as well. Those guys take a beating, and sometimes they're just not available to play. So if I were to say the one thing that escapes almost every team is the consistent level of play, day in, day out, game in, game out, on either their offensive or defensive line.
Because the broadcast partnerships and your job allows for you and your analysts and those that are working in the booth and the broadcast, the pregame access to both personnel and then at times strategy that teams are going in with, or mindset of teams. If Tom Brady is doing that role and is in addition to that, one of course, your colleagues within the Fox broadcast family, if he is in that role but is now also a minority owner within an NFL franchise, how is that going to work in terms of how much teams are allowing him to get in terms of that access? And is it a conflict? Is it going to have to be massaged between those two different areas of his resume?
Well, I think it's something that has certainly already been massaged, because the rules, as I understand it from reading the articles, we've never had a Fox conversation about this, I can tell you that, but just from reading the same articles that everybody else is, it sounds like the Brady rules have been in place for the majority of this season already. So he's already gone into it trying to learn the process, which is not an easy thing to do, with the notion that maybe you don't have the same access as others because of your ownership stake. The one thing, though, that I know about Tom Brady is there's never been anybody better at the quarterback position or has better knowledge of the game that played it than Tom Brady. So if anybody has the ability to overcome a hindrance here or there, I would say it's Tom Brady. I think the continued thing for him is just, you've seen the growth, you've heard the growth, and I listen to all this stuff because I'm first off a student of broadcasting, and I'm trying to get better. But it is something that I've heard him get better at this as the 6 weeks have gone on, and I'm sure he will continue to do so because he does have a terrific work ethic. It's just that he's just going to have to work it a different way than others do in this business.
If Miami is able to win on Sunday, Kevin, and you are leaving Lucas Oil Stadium after a Dolphins win, you're going to say to yourself, Miami was able to win because they were able to take advantage of which of their strengths where they exploited Indianapolis?
I think if they've won the game, they've won the game because they ran the game, and they ran the football, and they were able to control the time of possession. They were able to control the line of scrimmage, and they were able to move the Colts with the ball on the ground. That's the way that I think Miami wants to win this game. That's the way that they look at this, I'm sure. Now, we haven't had our Miami meetings yet, but I'm assuming that you look at the numbers and you look at some of the struggles that the Colts have had at times. I got to think, if you're Mike McDaniel, who has run the ball well before, who ran the ball well 2 weeks ago against the Patriots, you have a new quarterback who's still learning the system. I got to think that the run game is the key for Miami in this one. If the Colts shut down the run game, I think it becomes really difficult for Miami to win on the road.
All right, Kevin. Again, you will be on the call for Westwood 1 tonight. That for Thursday Night Football between Denver and New Orleans. Then the Colts game on Sunday. Then Monday Night Football between the Chargers and Cardinals. So a busy couple days. Certainly appreciate the time today and enjoy watching the Huskers and Hoosiers on Saturday as well.
Big weekend in Indiana. Can't wait to get there. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Kevin Cougler from Fox joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. All right, Jimmy, you said that there's an update to the injury status for Colts players for today, correct?
There are indeed.
Okay, so we'll do this in typical fashion.
Okay,
Eddie, you go ahead and cue up and get ready with the sound effects to rehash for our listening audience.
Where have you been?
Thank you. If a player is, I'm going to name a player. If that player has practiced, then we will hear this particular sound effect once I name the player to Jimmy. Jimmy gives the cue to Eddie, and then, folks, you will hear this if the player has practiced. You got it! That's right. If the player has not practiced, if the player is sitting out, and we have eyes on them on the sideline, you will hear this. And if the player is absent, if we have not seen the player, there's no report of them actually coming out yet for practice, you will hear this. Okay? Thank you.
I like the suspense with the crickets.
That's right.
They got to get ready.
Okay.
I had to wait for silence,
I'll
because that's
start
the only
with the
time you
big
hear
one. We'll go with running back Jonathan Taylor, Jimmy. Jonathan Taylor. Okay? Wide receiver Josh Downs. Ooh, okay. Wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. That's good. Offensive lineman Braden Smith. You got it! That's the ding, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Center Ryan Kelly.
Well, so we have a
conflict.
We have
here.
a conflict. Per our own Kevin Bowen, he lists him in the guys back category. So, is that you saying we already knew that, Eddie? Was why you play the crickets there, or
No,
Okay.
I hadn't seen that one.
Okay,
I was looking
all
at
right.
a different list.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and is there quarterback Anthony Richardson? Did we do him yet? Anybody else I'm missing?
EJ Speed. You got it. Dio Odengbo. Did you? I mean, just for the sake of clerical work, DeForest Buckner.
There's one more. Sermon, Trey.
Ah, there you go.
So what we're getting at is, in terms of the sidelines, DeForest Buckner's on the sidelines, right?
Correct.
Anybody else?
Jonathan Taylor.
And Jonathan Taylor.
Twiggy.
So when those two, Jonathan Taylor and DeForest Buckner, are on
Twiggy.
the sidelines and they're looking around, what they're hearing is this on the sidelines. It'd be the crickets, Eddie.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had
They're
something.
hearing crickets. See, they're the only two on the sidelines, so there's nothing around them, so they would be hearing this. Okay, thank you. Eddie, thanks for coming today, by the way.
Sometimes, Jake, you have audio queued up over there, or sound, as some people call it, and I didn't know if that was the situation. So
Eddie, I think you're calling a great game.
downward.
I think you're doing your best.
You remind me of
Sal Volcano from Practical Jokers.
No,
I do see that a little bit now that you say that. Yes, I'll never unsee that
Vern
now.
from Stand By Me, and then
It's
also
Not the first time you've said that.
I want to say, and it's been so long ago, I'm gonna butcher this guy's last name. I believe it was Lavalier, the catcher for the Pirates in the 1990 NLCS.
No, not Jason Kendall.
Prior to Jason Kendall.
That Sal poll is crazy. You've ruined you for me now, Eddie. I'm never going to unsee that.
I'll figure out the Pirates for you, Jake.
I'm kind of excited for this weekend, by the way, because on Saturday I'm going to be emceeing along with head coach Pat Knight and others Marian's homecoming for their football game. Ted Karras, head coach of the Knights, and he is going to join us next. So Saturday on, I guess we'll say the near west side of Indianapolis, I look forward to this. Am seeing a kind of a get-to-know roundtable with the basketball coaches for Marian Athletics. Pat Knight, of course, on the men's side. Santana Anderson on the women's side. And getting the crowd fired up for homecoming as the Marian Knights football team then will take to the field to take on Olivet Nazarene. That kickoff at 1:05 coming up on Saturday at Ascension St. Vincent Field. And joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, head coach of the Knights, Ted Karras, to join us. Coach, I'll get right to this. You know, obviously you guys were coming off a bye and went up against a highly touted and ranked Indiana Wesleyan team, defensively giving up 77 points. I mean, you're 4-1, so obviously still off to a good start. Is there a silver lining that can be taken from that in the fact of you were coming off the bye, and I guess maybe that's a wake-up call for your guys to kind of refocus? What's your overall mindset coming off that game?
No real silver lining, you guys. It's either, there's winning and then there's misery. So that was a miserable Saturday afternoon. But what you got to do now moving forward from it is own it, learn from it, fix it, and move on. And I am happy with the way our guys have come out to practice last 2 days. Actually, yesterday we thought it was one of our best practices of the season. And, I took it to heart. It's a sobering wake-up call for them indeed. So that's what we've done, and it's Thursday of homecoming week, and we got to redeem ourselves this Saturday.
Do you ever find going into a year, Coach, do you get really an idea, or are there indications that you can get from your team in wins to know how they're going to respond to adversity and how, like, what was your anticipation of the way they would respond? You said a good response, which is good, but did that surprise you about this group at all?
No, I think we're a resilient group, and that's been tested in our first 4 games when they've been tight contests. We're resilient. We fight. But I think going into every year, you never really know right off the bat. So, but like I said, all we could do is take care of this week and what we got to do this Saturday. And they strung together 2 good practices. We got to get another one today, and we got to put on a good show on Saturday.
Head coach of Marian football, Ted Karras, is our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Coach, always great to talk with you. You mentioned turning the page, and nothing like an homecoming atmosphere at Marian to do that. For those that have not had the opportunity to experience homecoming on the campus of Marian University and experience a nice little afternoon football game, what are they in for this weekend?
Oh, a lot of activities on campus, starting tonight. Great tailgating going on. You guys are coming to campus, so Jake, that's awesome. That's such a cool thing, coming to campus. Should be a big crowd. A lot of alums coming back. Great atmosphere Saturday afternoon on the west side.
Coach, you guys, along with that, and I look forward to it, right? It's going to be fun, and I look forward to the game as well. And I'm curious of this because, you are at the halfway mark here, right? You played 5 games. You got 5 remaining. So
yep.
Do you kind of redirect over the course of a year? I guess what I'm getting at is, and I'm not even talking about just coming off of that loss, but just in general when you're at the halfway point, do you retweak and retool who you are and what you do over the course of a season, or is there a danger in that and you've got to stand by who you are and how you play regardless of how things have gone?
No, you have to. I think you have to retool. We have to reset a little bit defensively. We have to play some more zone coverage. When we blitz, we got to get there. We have to definitely retool and do some things differently. At least that's the way I'm approaching it, and even personnel-wise too, and positionally. So, no, I think you got to make some adjustments there. And then just this season, the way it is, we played all the teams on the east side of the league. So that's what they're now all our goals are still in front of us. The west side of conference play begins this Saturday. We have 5 games in that. We win those, win conference, you get a playoff bid. So that's the task at hand, and it starts this Saturday.
And it starts this Saturday. Next 2 are at home. As we'd mentioned, Olivet Nazarene coming up 1:05 p.m. kick over at Marian at Ascension St. Vincent Field on Saturday. Then rinse and repeat, basically, because a week later, same thing with St. Francis coming in, also a 1:05 kick. So back-to-back Saturdays, a chance to go out and watch this, and a lot of local products, which is one of the great things about it. You have done well in what area to this point, Coach, that you've really been impressed by and want to make sure that you're maintaining?
I want to maintain our offensive line. Our pass protection has been stellar, pretty much senior-laden O-line. That's some things that we want to continue. I think probably we're a little bit stronger in the pass game than the run game, but I'd like to improve on the run game there. Our receivers had a pretty good year. Jake Reicher's having an outstanding year. And then defensively, obviously, some things that we have done well is we've created turnovers, and we got to continue to do that.
Coach, we asked you this a lot last year, with it being at the time year one of your second stint with Marian, of getting reacclimated and feeling like being back at home for you. Year two, with all that behind you now, with focused on building off of last season, what's changed and what's stayed the same for you as you've fully reestablished your routine and what you want this program to be?
Well, change-wise, defensively, we have eight new starters, so that's something that's changed, and we got to coach them up and get them playing at a higher level. Things that remain the same as the standard here. We created a standard of winning and excellence, and we want to continue to maintain that. And last Saturday wasn't a reflection of that, and we got to do it this Saturday.
Coach, have you gotten to, maybe you already knew him, I don't know, but with Pat Knight coming over now as, the latest hire within Marian Athletics on the basketball side, and Steve Downing hiring him in the offseason, Todd Howard as well, two guys I like a great deal. Have you gotten to know those guys at all? Did you have any relationship with them prior to their joining the athletic staff there?
No, I've just got to meet them both here once they got hired. Great guys, going to do a great job here. Looking forward to continue that relationship. I'm just we're in prime time as they've, been hired here, so we haven't had a lot of interaction, but we've had some, and they've been a great addition to the Marian University athletic staff. Yeah,
you're locked in and loaded right in the prime of it here, right? Obviously, yeah. And, like we talked about, halfway through the mark here, homecoming coming up. Homecoming itself and just the festivities that you talked about, any level of, as odd as this may sound, just a distraction to that, or do your guys, is it business as usual and you've got to just approach it as such?
It's business as usual. We got to approach it as such. Absolutely. But there's a lot of alums, they're going to be looking at us, and we feel that, and we want to put on a good show for them.
All right, 4-1, everything getting underway at 1 o'clock, but I encourage everybody to get out there. You mentioned the tailgating's no joke, right? Especially for homecoming weekend, but tailgating in general is big out there.
Big, man. I've saw it, from the early days now to what it is now. No, it's great. Great atmosphere. A lot of good tailgating going on.
I'll be out there. Look forward to it, and best of luck against Olivet Nazarene for homecoming. We'll be doing the Q&A and getting the fans fired up, and I'll do my best to get everybody excited, all right?
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, Coach, take Karras of the Marian Knights joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. I'm telling you, Jimmy, you guys are both very active just in terms of the high school football in the area and some of the local products, good players in the area, a lot of them at Marian. But you go past now that campus, every time I drive past it, it's bigger. There's a new addition to it, the stadium, the tailgating. It's impressive.
Yeah, it's a beautiful campus. We talk about all the time about, Butler or, IU Indy or wherever around central Indiana, but you cannot skip over the beauty of Marian's campus. They have great sports. As Ted Karras mentioned, they have set up a winning tradition dating back to, their two national titles in 2012 and 2015, and they want to get back to that. But from an on-campus atmosphere and a standpoint, there's nothing like it in terms of getting able to be out there for a homecoming, for senior night when that comes up a little bit later on the schedule. It's a beautiful campus, and yeah, Jake, I don't know how they do it, but it does seem like it grows every time I drive by it.
It's like that when you're coming down Capitol, like Methodist Hospital, just like keeps getting bigger and bigger too.
I was just there a couple of weeks ago for when the fan had Cathedral Center Grove.
Methodist or
they played at Marian University. Okay. Very nice field, very nice campus. I was one of the few times I've been by it, I was like, holy crap, this is a lot nicer than you would expect.
For sure. By the way, Marian's colors, blue and gold. Blue and gold going to be in action tonight. Final preseason game for the Pacers. What are we looking for? A couple of things actually to keep an eye on tonight. We'll let you know what they are on the other side. Matt Taylor in just about 20 minutes as well. Corey Company here on a Thursday on The Fan. Okay, I had mentioned that I was at the Pacer preseason game on Monday to start the week against, was it Monday or Tuesday against Memphis? That was Monday, right?
Yes, that was Monday.
And, obviously we talked a lot about Zach Edey, and it was a pretty fun game to be in attendance. But the reality is there were a lot of players on the floor that were combinations that were not representative of what you're going to see over the course of the regular season, because you had no Tyrese Halliburton on the floor. You had no Miles Turner on the floor. You had, I believe, Aaron Nesmith was out as well. That's probably going to change tonight, Eddie, as the Pacers take on Charlotte for the final preseason game. But we do expect tonight that we might see a little bit more, maybe not for the totality of the game, but at least to start, we're going to have a little better indication as to who the Pacers are going to be, right?
Yeah, that's right. None of the starters have played into the second half so far. Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker played, I think, a ton. Walker played almost 40 minutes, I think, in their last game. But, yeah, this probably is going to be closer to like what you'll see during the regular season. Starters will start, and the rotations will be a little bit more like normal, where, they'll substitute 3 players in, they'll sub 3 out, leave 2 starters in, and just kind of get combinations of lineups going as they prepare for their regular season opener against Detroit next Wednesday.
If they're going to treat this as a dress rehearsal to some extent, and as Eddie outlined there, it would appear that you're not going to see starters necessarily go for the full game, but you would think that you're getting a close to or as close to a regular season rotation for the first quarter or two to open things. The biggest thing I would like to see today, Jake, is a quicker start. That's kind of what's doing them at times during the preseason, especially against Memphis, is just sloppy, slow starts.
I thought I was going to see a scoreless first quarter.
And with what they want to do in the regular season, we know they want to be up and down the floor. They want to lead the league in points per game, again, in points per possession, be as efficient as possible. And a lot of that begins with quick, fast starts. And that's magnified in this preseason finale, where you're only, in theory, going to see your best players or your best rotation for the first couple quarters or so. So that's the biggest thing for me, is I would like to see a more efficient and faster start that we can become accustomed to seeing, like we were able to for the majority of the regular season and into the playoffs last year.
The Benedict Mathurin is an interesting one that you brought up, Eddie, because, and Jimmy, the reality is this with Benedict Mathurin. I mean, we know he's a very good player. He looks to be in great shape. He had the surgery that ended his season last year. And what is interesting is when the Pacers, and listen, I want to be clear here. It has nothing to do, it wasn't because Benedict Mathurin was out that the Pacers all of a sudden went on this run, right? But their biggest moments and their biggest games a year ago came when Benedict Mathurin was not on the floor. So conventional wisdom would say that's benefit Indiana. You have this roster that got experience, played in big games, recaptured the imagination and the enthusiasm of the fan base, and did so with one of their promising bright young stars sidelined. Wow, you bring him back and you add to it, then boom, there's an extra push for you. But does it in any way, shape, or form disrupt, for lack of a better phrase, the flow, the chemistry, the camaraderie, the bond of the way that they're going to play? Does it change things? Are they a different team now? We don't know the answer to that. We won't know the answer to that. And one would hope the answer to that is an absolute resounding no. But you just don't know how that changes just the rotations and other such things, right?
The reality of Benedict Mathurin is there were moments last season, ignore the defensive struggles for just a second because those have been well documented. Just speaking from an offensive standpoint, there were noticeable moments throughout the course of last season where the pace, the flow, the quick passing, it got stuck at times with Benedict Mathurin on the floor. That's something that has to be adapted and something that has to change, and I think it will. I think he's only going to grow as an offensive talent as he continues to get years in the NBA. But the reason that I would agree with the sentiment that they are going to be able to plug him in and be a better team because of it, especially when we get to the postseason, there were moments, especially in that Boston series, where regardless if you think isolation ball is dead or if it doesn't work as much in today's NBA, there are still moments around the top scorers in the league, like Donovan Mitchell, like Kevin Durant, like Luka Doncic, like Jason Tatum, et cetera, where you need a guy to just go get you a bucket and everybody else get the hell out of the way. And Benedict Mathurin has that trait within his game. And that's something they missed last year. So, yes, he needs to not be a black hole and have things stick within him on the offensive flow, but there are moments where you need him back in the rotation and need him to be back healthy, which is what he is going into the year. Because I think and look back to that Boston series and how close they were in some of those one-possession games. And at that point, injuries were across the board. But man, if you had a bucket getter like him out there, it changes things, and it's just another element for opposing defenses to focus on.
You know, it's funny because when you really look last year, there's this weird feeling that the Pacers were just as close to getting to the finals as they were getting beat like in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like they're just, it was a, I'm just so fascinated by this. I always get, look, you guys are like this for Major League Baseball, which I respect. And I know everybody's like this for the National Football League. For me, the one, more than any other sport, the one thing that where I really do get excited is opening night of the NBA. Opening night of the Pacers season.
I'm right there with you.
There's something about it to me that's just watching the different teams and trying to figure out who is improved and who's I really enjoy all of it. And every year, you know, I get super excited and optimistic about like, well, you know, what can the Pacers do this year?
Hope.
Correct. And it's been so enigmatic the last couple of years that now all of a sudden, like it just feels different now.
There's hopeful expectations
let's go, right?
this year. There's real hopeful expectations. Unlike in past years where could they make the play? No, this year it's like they're going to hit their over on their wins and they're going to be another playoff team and maybe they make a deep run. There's real expectations this season.
And it was funny going into the game on Monday night because I was thinking to myself, like, it seems like just a couple of months ago I was here. And I know that it's been 6 months, but the reality, well, I guess 5. But then I thought, oh, wait a minute, there were a lot of years there where, in fact, I mean, it's a month closer between games than it was before, right? Last couple of years.
The NBA offseason feels a heck of a lot longer, it turns out, when you're not in the conference finals.
Correct. That's exactly
when
correct.
When your season's done in April, it feels like it's been a year.
Colts again taking on the Dolphins on Sunday, Lucas Oil Stadium. Matt Taylor will have the radio call of that game. But before he does that, he will join us, and he will do it next. going to join us here in just a couple of minutes on this Thursday. Jimmy, got big plans for the evening?
Yeah, I'm meeting up with my friend Nick Kuntz, also a fellow Yankees fan, going to
I was
his
about
house
to say, you know what today is, right,
to
Jake?
watch
Come on now.
Game 3 of the ALCS as the series shifts to Cleveland.
It's 2-0 right now, right?
It is indeed.
Okay.
A lot
So
of
it's
baseball
over.
left.
It's over, right?
Not over.
Left. A lot of baseball left.
No, it's over.
I refuse to subscribe to such views. Job's not finished.
Here's the thing.
Sure.
I have nothing against the Yankees.
Sure.
I have nothing. I actually kind of like the Mets,
Okay.
but with that said,
Uh-huh.
I don't want to see it be Yankees and Mets.
Okay, well,
The Mets are a team followed by Greg Poley, friend of the show. His son Owen last night hitting a full
it's crazy.
court hole-in-one putt for $10,000 at Indiana State.
Big
during an
time.
Indiana State athletic competition. Owen Poley, who also was named the sports director of the student radio station in Terre Haute for Indiana State athletics, but $10,000 richer. So
Good for him.
The son of Mr. 300.
that's right. His dad's bowled a couple 300 games. Right?
More than a couple, yeah.
Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, he is the voice of the Indianapolis Colts, Matt Taylor. Colts out on the practice field. So, Matt, let's get to this. We kind of went over who is in and out in terms of practice today. Any big surprises that you have noticed or can update us on who is at this point looking available or unavailable?
No, I think the big ones this week are Jonathan Taylor and Ryan Kelly. You know, both guys didn't practice yesterday. We'll see what their availability is.
I think agents might have. Oh, there you are. Got you back.
You got me. I don't know what's going on with my phone, fellas. I apologize. I got to get this looked at here. So that's on me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, BlackBerry. Is that a BlackBerry?
I don't know. I mean, I'm using a standard desk phone. I don't know. I mean, I guess I need to call, like, you know, MCI back in the day. Remember that? MCI or
That's
like
right.
Bank, you know, American Bell or something.
That's right.
But anyways, yeah, Jonathan Taylor spoke with reporters earlier today and said that he's feeling better. He's much better this week than he was last week, and is still kind of feeling out the process of moving and cutting, and didn't know when he spoke with reporters at his locker if he was going to be able to practice today. So that one's a big TBD. But the other guys, I think, are more maintenance than anything else, you know, based on them being able to play last week. Guys like Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr., Anthony Richardson. So I think it's trending in the right direction. But, again, I think your starting center and your otherworldly running back, I think, are your big ones to monitor going forward.
Now, would you agree with this, Matt? And feel free to disagree with it, actually. But I guess I'll just ask it in simple form. Do you think Jonathan Taylor could play if he doesn't practice all week? Did I stop Matt again? Well, actually, Jake, I think that's the best question I've been given, but it doesn't surprise me because of your brilliance. Okay, I think we have Matt back. So, Matt, could Jonathan Taylor actually play? Did they need to get him on the practice field in order for him to play, or could he rest the whole week and then still go on Sunday?
All right, I think I'm going to plug this thing back in. I'm like doing the whole Sega thing, like I'm blowing on the cartridge right now.
I respect
you know what
that.
I mean?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm about to throw this thing onto 56th Street here in a second.
There's a Pizza Hut right up the street, I think. You can have your full gaming session. Reunite some childhood memories there, Matt, for sure.
Where's Aladdin's castle when you need it?
That's right.
No, I think he's at the stage in his career where he can be able to be effective and play on Sunday if he doesn't practice throughout the course of the week. We've seen other players this year, in fact, do that. But it's kind of a slippery slope. You know, how much time does he need, time on task to rep the timing of certain plays, certainly some RPO stuff that the Colts like to do within the offense. That would be up for debate. But I think big picture, yes, Jonathan Taylor kind of falls into that bucket in year 5 for him, that if he could still go out and run for, 50, 75 yards, if you will, and be effective and yards per carry, even if he doesn't, practice Wednesday to Friday.
Matt, the next 4 for the Colts, including this weekend, Miami, Houston on the road, Minnesota on the road, home at Buffalo. And I ask all that to say Jonathan Taylor was asked about IR potential today, and he kind of downplayed it and talked about how much of a pain it was being on the PUP last year. Walk me through the delicate balance. I know we're operating in a hypothetical here of weighing that as a potential option for any player, let alone one of Jonathan Taylor's magnitude, when you look at the gauntlet that is upcoming for the Colts and losing potentially a weapon of that caliber for 4 games, it wouldn't be an easy decision for the Colts, because if he's healthy in 2 weeks, well, then you're out of luck because he has to miss those 4 games minimum.
Right. No, it is a delicate balance, and it's a high ankle sprain. And, for a normal person or a normal athlete, that's 4 to 6. So every day they're trying to, chop that down as best.
Take the cartridge out here.
We had you at chop that down as best, and then it cut out.
Can I call you back? Let's try something
Absolutely.
else. Let me call right
That's fine.
back.
No problem, Matt.
This is working
no,
well. Yeah.
No problem whatsoever. Matt Taylor, voice the Colts, going to give us a call back. But, Jake, it's a very delicate balance to strike, because if you put him on there today and he's good in 2 weeks, well, that means you're without him for the Buffalo game and the Minnesota game.
Right.
Like, you can't,
like I said,
can't afford that.
The gauntlet's about to come, right?
Yeah.
I mean, their schedule, taking nothing from Miami, because Miami is obviously very good, but they're very hurt, right?
Yes.
It's just
they're an inept offense. They're as inept offensively
yes,
as any team
the
in the
Dolphins are a
National
shell
Football
of
League.
what they should be,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In their defense.
They've been dealing with their own injuries. Tua Tagovailoa is not coming out anytime soon. It is Tyler Huntley that's their man under center, and all they're banking on is another week in that system with the bye week sandwiched in there as well, that he's going to be able to run the offense more effectively. But outside of that, every Dolphins game this year has been first to 15 is probably going to win. I think
and run. I mean,
yeah,
Miami's going to try to run. All right, Matt's back, we think.
Matt,
all right,
you got us?
As you were, Matt.
On the IR area with Jonathan Taylor, that balancing act, if you've got us.
All right, this is plan C, all right? So I don't get any service inside this building, and then my desk phone doesn't work. So how does this sound? Is this all right?
Crystal clear, Matt.
All right.
Jonathan Taylor, IR, delicate balance you mentioned in regards to what the schedule is for the next 4 games.
Yeah, so, I mean, he suffers the injury in the fourth quarter of the Steelers game, and then at that point you're trying to evaluate how significant is this, how severe is it, and, if it's going to be, if you know for sure it's going to be, 2 months, then obviously you put him on IR. But if it's kind of murky with a player like Jonathan Taylor, who is so significant and can give you such a big impact on offense, you want to kind of slow play it, which I think the Colts did. So it's one of those things where if he does end up missing 4 games, hypothetically, the fan base gets upset because, well, if he's going to miss 4 games, why didn't you put him on IR? That, frees up a roster spot. Maybe you can add another running back or something else to the roster. So
Just not meant to be.
That's right.
The fates are playing against Matt Taylor and Query and Company today.
We want to make very sure that people understand that this has nothing to do with Shelby Materials. It has nothing to do with the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, right?
There's concrete and aggregate experts and there's auto and tire experts there, and they have nothing to do with
I think we can concretely say that Matt will join us sometime at a later date, and unfortunately today it's not in the cards for Matt to be part of the program.
It could be, honestly. We can't rule out high-tech agents that don't want Jonathan Taylor IR conversations to be going on. I mean, who's to totally rule that out?
It's Malky Kawa. He is sabotaging this.
That's the agent, by the way, just so everybody knows, the agent for Jonathan Taylor, right? Isn't he also, who's the other? Shaq Leonard.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep.
Shaq Leonard never signed, right? Still a free agent?
Correct. He's out there.
Man, that is one.
You get to a point where 3-4 weeks from now, you're giving a phone call. And I'm not saying the Colts, just a team in general, right? Like, if he still wants to play and all the injuries stacking up around the league.
I think it just goes to show the fragile nature of the National Football League.
Yeah, for sure. Want to go one more?
Are we on plan D?
All right. What's more?
Now, Matt, are you now at the Speedway off of 56th Street on a payphone?
I'll tell you, I might as well be down at the Subway or the Five Guys in Brownsburg or something. I'm in the parking lot now on my cell phone, so I don't. Yeah, whatever we're at right now, letter-wise, let's give it a go.
All right, there we go. So, all right, well, here's the thing. Here's what we're going to do. You ready? Did you ever do an Etch-a-Sketch when you were a kid?
Yeah, I was never any good at them.
Right, I wasn't either, but we're about to shake that thing and clear it all the way out. You ready? So we're gonna
ready.
So shake. All right. Brand new conversation with Matt Taylor, who joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, brought to you by Shelby Materials. Matt, let's begin with this. Anthony Richardson has obviously been one that we've been keeping an eye on, and let's assume that he does go on Sunday. I'm not putting those words in your mouth nor mine, but the anticipation is that barring a setback, that's going to be the case. do the Colts offensively look any different? In other words, when they had Joe Flacco out there, have you noticed that the playbook is in any way, shape, or form differently or approached differently than when Anthony Richardson has been under center?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know what the number was. I read it earlier today. I don't have it in front of me because I'm sitting here in a parking lot. You know the drill. But it was drastic. It was drastic in the terms of the Colts' explosivity rate. Big play potential with Anthony Richardson compared to Joe Flacco, and it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because in the first couple of games when Anthony was out there as a starting quarterback, the Colts were kind of feast or famine. They would get the big plays. To Alec Pierce, they would get the 50-yard chunks or the 25-yard run and catch plays. But the overall completion percentage wasn't there with Anthony Richardson, right? I think through 4 games, he's right around 50%. Pass rating's not very good at down around 60%. So those are the things that need to be improved. And then with Joe Flacco, it's kind of the opposite. You did have a couple of chunk plays to Alec Pierce in the Jacksonville game in the fourth quarter, but for the most part, that game was kind of methodical in the passing game, high completion percentage out of Joe Flacco. So it's definitely going to aesthetically look a lot different with Anthony Richardson at quarterback on Sunday versus Joe Flacco. There's different ways to skin a cat, but I think Anthony Richardson needs to play. He needs all the experience that he can get. And I think this is the right move after a 3-3 start to the season, going back to Anthony Richardson.
Now, I did hear a weird noise in the background at the beginning of that answer, and I want to make sure people understand. There are no cats being skinned in this actual. That was strictly a phrase that he threw out there. That no animals are being harmed during the phones, maybe, right?
Correct.
Phones, maybe.
Yes.
No animals.
I mean, you might hear a loud crash of a desk phone being thrown out into the street by Matt Taylor, but outside of that, no cats whatsoever.
It's already happened. All right,
that's good.
Office Space. PC load letter. What the heck does that mean?
I imagine.
Love that.
I imagine, go there, Ron Swanson, Parks and Rec, throwing the computer into the trash can. I imagine the same thing's 100%. Happening there for Matt Taylor. The latest reporting on the back of Michael Pittman Jr. is that it is a pain tolerance thing. Is that the latest that you've heard, is that he's just going to have to be at his best to play through it, and it's something to monitor week to week? Is that basically where we're at there?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that this thing is going to be with him for the duration of the season, and hopefully that's all the way until January with this thing. But I think he had a really long conversation because it was really bizarre last week about how this whole thing went down with all the national reports from some very credible people about how the fact he's going to miss games and is possibly going to go on IR. And then you go out to practice on Friday, and there he is, and he looks fine. He looks great, and he's catching balls and moving around. He's involved in the first team offense, and there he is on Sunday, with some big plays, the game-winning touchdown. So he said after the game on Sunday he had a really nice, hard conversation with his dad. His dad was one of the toughest guys in the NFL during his generation, and just got some advice and just wants to be there for his teammates. If he can go at any capacity, he feels like he wants to do that and wants to be that type of guy to show some toughness. So he's certainly, I think, within the top 5 toughest guys the Colts have. But again, I think it's fair to say that this thing is going to be with him for the remainder of the season, and he's just trying to manage it, and he's just trying to answer the bell every single Sunday for the Colts.
Matt, when you look at the offensive line, I mean, obviously, Ryan Kelly, we've talked about it. I mean, I love the ability for Bortolini to come in when Ryan Kelly was out and play the center position. But then when you look at on the right side of the line, having to kind of move people around, the injury, unfortunately, to Will Fries, Braden Smith was a little bit dinged up. Where do they stand in terms of health, and who is the player that is kind of the Swiss Army knife that can go different positions for them?
Well, you're still wondering what's going on with Ryan Kelly. So I think today is going to be a big swing day for him. Like we said, yesterday he didn't practice. Later in the week is probably a more of an indicator of what your probability is for playing on Sunday. So the big injury report day for Ryan is probably this afternoon. Tanner Bortolini is probably that guy, the Swiss Army knife inside between the center position and the guard position. He's already played both this year at times. I shouldn't say that because in the regular season he's only played center, but he was cross-training in the preseason and in training camp as well. But he's got position flexibility to play both guard and center. And so it would be Bortolini, that is, to play center coming up on Sunday if Ryan Kelly can't play. And he had to do that for a start against Pittsburgh and held his own, very well, acquitted himself really well against Cameron Hayward. Had to do that last Sunday when Ryan went out with the calf injury. Ken came in and played well, and the Colts were able to get some big runs there in the second half to set up some scores. So it's not ideal, but I think you tip your cap to both Bortolini and Dalton Tucker, two rookies that have had to play a lot up front, and there really hasn't been much drop-off with Tony Sperano's unit, I should say, and that's a really big credit to him and their ability to get these guys up to speed and mix in with the veteran group that is there between, guys like Braden Smith and Bernard Ryman. It's been really solid the way those guys have come in and developed really quickly.
Joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, he is Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts. He's presented by Shelby Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts. Matt, there was a piece by Joel Erickson of the Indy Star today on Leatu Latu with the headline, "Why the Colts are confident rookie defensive end Leatu Latu will turn pressures into sacks soon." And it goes into, maybe some frustration from Latu and trying to continue to make his impact as a rookie. My theory has been that they were going to ease him along to start the season. You look back at, a guy he probably would love to be as a career guy for certainly, a Hall of Famer like Dwight Freeney. His rookie season, he wasn't immediately impact guy. He was not really making his presence felt till week 12, 13, and beyond at that point. Leatu was forced into an earlier role than asked upon, I think has shown admirably for that role. And then he's been asked even more as the injuries have piled up around him, like DeForest Buckner and Tyquan Lewis, that defenses can make his life more difficult than maybe it would have been to start the year. Long-winded way of saying, for Latu, is there real frustration there, or is he about on pace for what they would have expected of him given the circumstances to this point?
Yeah, I think there's probably frustration considering, what he's used to and what he's put up in the last 2 years at UCLA. I know it's, you're going from the Pac-12 or the Big Ten in this case now to the NFL. But, he had 23 and a half sacks combined in the last 2 years, and now he's only got one through the first 6 games of the season. So I think naturally, even though you're a rookie and you're kind of still feeling it out, I think naturally, you're kind of frustrated and annoyed that you're not having a bigger impact. But that's the thing. I think it's kind of deceiving because I think as fans we just say, okay, how many sacks do the Colts get, and that's how good their pass rush is. I think there's obviously more to that. I think everybody understands that. But, Trevor Lawrence was getting the ball out really quick the other day, and that led to some really bad tackling by the Colts with some explosive plays. Will Levis was getting the ball out quickly the other day too, but the Colts were better tacklers in that game. I think that was the biggest difference. But I think Leatu Latu is close to having some really special moments because he's got the pressures. I think he's got the third most pressures among rookies. But again, pressures are good. They kind of tell part of the story, but everybody wants the sacks. And I think he is close to getting, some fourth quarter, game momentum swinging type of sacks coming up for the Colts. And they need it, like you said. Still banged up a little bit, still waiting for DeForest Buckner to come back. If Leatu Latu can come in and, provide some stability up front, he's doing a better job of setting the edge too. He's doing a better job playing the run. But they want him to turn into the guy they drafted, and that's to basically seal games. You're up 2 scores in the fourth quarter, go get a strip sack in the game. Get the ball back in the hands of the offense. That's what you're still kind of waiting for Latu. But I think it's coming. You just got to be special, or got to be patient, I should say, for a special player that's still a rookie that's still trying to figure out how to, set up tackles, how to use his wide variety of pass rush moves to make an impact in the fourth quarter.
Matt, it's Halloween time, so you're cool with spirits, right? This time of year, spirits are fun, right? We can agree on that.
I'm more of an orb guy, to be honest with you. Orbs.
I do have a photo that was taken of myself. I know this will stun you. Myself and a buddy went to the site where a horrific crime had taken place, took a photo, and there's an orb above us. Now, some people think it's dust.
You're going to have
film.
to be more specific than that.
Well, I don't want to offend anybody, but let's just say.
No, I meant the visit to a murder scene. You got to explain which one.
Yeah, exactly, right? I have a habit of that. But for the sake of the discussion here, the reason I say it, Matt, is because I know you like animals, right? We all like animals, and no animals are harmed in this interview. So I need you to be my spirit animal on this, okay?
Yeah.
You and I have, over the course of these interviews, usually found common ground on some off-beaten path away from the other two guys here, right? So we had a topic of conversation.
Don't get us anymore.
What's that?
So the kids don't get us.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly right. So we had a topic of conversation earlier this week on this show, and I want to bring you into it because I have a feeling you're going to be my spirit animal on this, okay? I want you, Matt Taylor, to think about when you were you've told the story of when you were a kid, you would mimic games on tape recorders in your bedroom, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. When you think of that and you are recalling those memories, do you recall them in the first or third person? Is your memory of it looking at the tape recorder and looking at it as you did in that moment? Or when you think about it, are you like up in the corner of the room looking down at yourself doing it?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I'm very much in my 8 to 10-year-old body, doing it as I remember it.
Okay. Well, it was fun being your spirit animal up to this point, Matt. I'm a third person guy.
So you're like you're like Ebenezer Scrooge when he's going back in time, with the ghosts, and he's looking at all the memories of his past.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Although I did once experience Panoramic Life Review, which you can look that up if you want to know what that is, and in that it was all in first person. But everything else was that I think about when I think of memories. I think of it in the third person, for what that's worth. We had a very long conversation about this earlier, Matt. So if you go back to your first Indy 500 on the call way back when, and you're in turn 2, right? Correct. I was very good.
Yeah. So if you're in turn 2 way back in the day, and you think about that moment, you think about yourself, like you see your face.
I don't see my face, but I see, because I remember
doing it.
The first turn of the first lap of my first broadcast, Mario Marias and Marco Andretti had an accident. So I'm all like, here we go, and they come to me, and all of a sudden I see this silver streak go past. And when I think of that memory, I'm kind of looking down on the platform and seeing myself standing there calling it. I mean, I can also then, if you say, well, what did it look like? I can remember what it looked like. But if I'm telling the story, I think of seeing myself doing it.
Wow. This is deep, man.
Well,
I like this conversation.
Here's what it is, okay? I love me some me. And any chance that I get to see as much of myself as possible, I'm going to go ahead and exercise that option.
So what do other people say? Like, am I the weird one? Am I the outlier?
No,
I think
I said first person, but there's been instances since Jake boggled that in my brain that I have viewed it as a third person perspective. But generally, I would say first person.
Yeah. I would say, like, if I have a bad moment, like if I have a moment that I'd like to forget, or if I was embarrassed by something, then I'm looking at myself doing it. But if I have an affectionate moment, or a moment that I remember fondly,
correct,
then I put myself in that situation doing it.
The start of this interview, is that a third person or first person perspective for you?
Third all the way. Third all the way, right? Those are all negative
awesome.
things.
We love you, mate.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Colts Dolphins, you will
day.
have the call coming up at Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. We look forward to hearing it, and we will talk to you again next week. Appreciate the time as always. We'll let you get back inside.
Yeah, the best part about doing a game on the radio is I don't have to do it on the phone. So hopefully we can figure this out.
That's right. It'll be uninterrupted. We know that for certain. All right, appreciate it, Matt.
All right, see you guys.
All right, Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts. So you're half and half, third and first, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally if you made me pick a lane, it'd be first person, but there have been instances where I've recalled in the third person for sure.
All right, fair enough. Pacers in action tonight. We'll get back into that as well, and then Jimmy's picks plays of the day coming up about 15 minutes from now. You hear this disco beauty from the Bee Gees, you think about dancing, right? Makes you feel like dancing? We'll be doing that tomorrow for Former Colt Friday, and I promise you, because I've talked to this guy before, and then I called to line up the interview, and we were off and running. Jim Irsay calls him CNN because he talks 24 hours a day. But he also did a little dancing during his time with the Colts. The Verdants, Clarence Verdant, will join us tomorrow on the show for Former Colt Friday. And we will have fun reliving with Clarence Verdant some of his times as an Indianapolis Colt. Pacers in action tonight. Pascal Siakam yesterday went to Long's Donuts, got himself some donuts, did a video of it, which was fun. It's interesting, Jimmy. You almost forget is the wrong word. But when I mentioned earlier, for example, those that didn't play Monday night, I didn't mention Pascal Siakam. And I 100% will say, a year ago, you remember I was the one that was like, I was hesitant on whether or not he was a max contract guy for a 5-year deal. They got him for 4, so that's good. But now getting a full season with him in the mix, and I think just kind of continuing to see whether or not or how it blends with Halliburton, which one is the guy, right? Every team needs 2 guys, I realize that. But for the Pacers, which one, when it comes down to it, is the guy? And I think it is Halliburton's team.
I do too.
But Siakam's pretty, pretty darn good.
I
right?
could see it being, to the answer to that question, who is the guy with the ball in his hands at the end of games? I think undoubtedly it's Tyrese Halliburton, but he is also, while he has proficient ability as a scorer, he is most known as being one of the most gifted passers in the league right now.
Right,
so
he's got the ball in his hands, and he's looking for
correct.
Siakam.
It
but
very
yes.
well might be him setting up Siakam or setting up Nesmith or Nembhard or Turner, whoever. Or he's the one that takes the shot. But I think he's the one that ultimately winds up with the ball in his hands. But to your point about Siakam, you mentioned earlier the glass half full look from a Pacers perspective of making it to the conference finals with all the injuries they dealt with and with losing Benedict Mathurin. You think to yourself, man, you add Benedict Mathurin in now, and they should be even better than they were before. Well, you can make that same glass half full approach to Pascal Siakam, what was asked of him when he was traded, and in 4 months and change, he's able to get acclimated enough within Rick Carlisle's offense that they make the conference finals. Well, now you have a whole offseason underneath Rick Carlisle's tutelage. You would think that in terms of familiarizing yourself with that the sky should be even higher for what they can do on a nightly basis now that he's not having to really learn on the fly anymore. He's had a whole offseason with it.
And invited all the players over to his house to train leading up to training camp. I think that would be a big part of it. And I don't know if you've watched it. I forget what he calls those specifically, Jake, on Twitter. But I think in the one that he posted yesterday about going to Long's Donuts, he said that this is something that he normally didn't do before and that he's kind of growing and he loves it here. And he was talking about like how he goes out and people recognize him. They're like, oh, what's up? And they don't really swarm to him or whatever, like you would be if you were in a bigger market like New York or whatever. And he said he's kind of growing in that aspect. And I think that's going to help him on the floor just because I think he needs to be more of a leader. I think he's already done that a little bit by bringing the players over. And if he can be the vocal leader on the court, because Tyrese sometimes doesn't have that cachet yet. So with Siakam being the former champ, I think this will be a very fun time for Pascal Siakam and the Indiana Pacers.
Let me ask you guys this. Which player will we first have definitive answer on? If you are to envision, so I'm going to mention a player and then we're going to have where you say, okay, like give me a player, Jimmy, that when they first came in to the league or with their team, that you didn't know exactly like how they were going to fit in, but then you, as time passed on, you went, yep, that's the guy. That's a guy. Would Nembhard be one of those?
Yes, I would say at this stage, not when he first arrived, but with what you're looking at to the question of this Pacers team, Benedict Mathurin's going to be one of those players.
Well, but what I was going to say is this. Which player, when you look at a player that's already established, an established guy where I'll just use Nembhard as an example. When Nembhard had his big game as a rookie against the Lakers, and you're like, well, it's because guys were hurt, whatever. You didn't know how he was going to blend in. Now we know, okay, we know who he is. We know where he fits, etc. Which player of the following that I'm about to name which one will be first when we know definitively, yay or nay, whether they are a guy?
Okay.
Jarris Walker, Anthony Richardson. Which one which one first will we be able to say yay or nay whether or not they are a guy?
I think Anthony Richardson, because you need that clarity to show up at some point this year. Walker and the way things work at the NBA, my level of need to see it from him and what he's going to be asked to do this year is less immediate. With Richardson, we're asking for this on a weekly basis. If I still have just as many question marks at the end of this season about Anthony Richardson that I did going in, that's a problem. With Walker, you could still make the argument as long as he showed some strides that it takes a minute for players sometimes to pop in the NBA and find their role. We talk about it all the time, the archetype and the mental fortitude of a basketball player. You're used to being the best guy on your AAU team and the best guy maybe on your college team. And now you're in the NBA, and sure, you're a lottery pick, but you're not the best guy on this roster. How do you adapt? How do you find that role? How do you break through? I would still be looking at growth and opportunity for it for Jarris Walker all the way into next season, whereas with Richardson, I don't need definitive, but I need to see something this year, and I think we will by season's end.
With Richardson, yeah, I mean, I think it's like I keep saying, I think it's going to be this point a year from now where we have a definitive idea, and I think I think we're going to find that he is in fact a guy they're going to ride with. But obviously, a big part of that just needs to be him being out on the field, right? Walker, on the other hand, has been available, but there's just a logjam in front of him.
Yeah.
They're going to have to find a way. Repeatedly, I've been told Jarris Walker is a guy that they believe in, and that if, for example, this year, if he'd have been in the draft, he'd have been the number one player taken based on what teams think of him.
And you mentioned the logjam. We think that's going to be eased by him looking at more of a small forward role this year versus where he was with all the bodies.
I think they are trying to find a lane for him, right?
Yeah.
Can I provide my take here? Because I think it's different. I think you find an easier answer on Jarris Walker than Anthony Richardson because you have 81 opportunities to see Jarris Walker, and you still only have a handful of 11 opportunities left.
But Richardson is playing a position with no impediment in front of him, and Walker is.
I agree, but I'm still saying there's not going to be guys where there's guys missing. Aaron Nesmith may need a night off here and there, so it's going to let Walker get more minutes, or the Pacers are blowing somebody out,
and
or vice
the other
versa.
thing, too, that comes into favor for Walker is he can be a guy for them without having to be the guy. Richardson has to be the guy, right?
Bingo. That's the other part of it, too.
Walker's role can be a lot lesser than is Richardson's.
And I think, it's been hit on numerous times, just the lack of experience for Richardson. Like, the more he plays, the better he'll get, at least hopefully. And I think the evaluation on Richardson goes through next season because after year 3, that's when you have to make the decision on that fifth-year option.
To stay on the field, first you got to be on the field, right? Jimmy's plays of the day are next.
Today's plays of the day brought to you by Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Greenfield Signs, a professional comprehensive sign company with 2 locations in central Indiana. They'll take your signage ideas and take hold of the project from design all the way to delivery. Family-owned and managed business for more than 4 generations. You don't often get a second chance to make a first impression. Make the most out of your first opportunity with the fine folks at Greenfield Signs and Lighting. For more information, go to greenfieldsigns.com. Today's plays of the day focused on Thursday night football and Game 3 of the American League Championship Series. We'll start there first. First pitch, 5:08. I will take over 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs for Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Guardians. I will also take yes to the question of will Aaron Judge or Jose Ramirez hit a home run in tonight's game. However, in terms of my victor tonight, it's an if not now when moment for the Cleveland Guardians. They can't avoid a 3-0 hole. I will take the Cleveland Guardians to win the money line over the New York Yankees. Thursday night football, Broncos and Saints. Maybe Eddie will. I'd love to do something with that total, but it's too gross to touch. Total of 37 between the Saints and the Broncos tonight. I'll just take Denver. Denver has a very solid defense. Bo Nix has looked all right, and the Saints don't have anybody to throw the ball to outside of Alvin Kamara. I will take the Broncos to win the money line in New Orleans. Eddie, any plays for you?
Yep, I've got 3. A nice 2-0 day yesterday from yours truly. I played this in, I think it was game number 1. Juan Soto over 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs. I love the matchup for him. He is way better against lefties, which is surprising in today's Major League Baseball, than he is against righties, and he's always going to be in advantageous positions to drive in runs. Solely because of his power and where he's at in the lineup. And then in terms of Mets-Dodgers tonight, going back to it, over 7. I got a flat 7, no hook this time is what they're giving me. I hit it yesterday.
No hook?
Yeah, the hook would be the half. So as Jimmy likes to do, he always likes to buy the hook.
No.
There is no hook here.
I haven't bought the hook in a minute, but there is no hook here. You were correct.
And then I will be taking Spencer Rattler.
James Worthy is impressed, by the way.
I did skip that, by the way. That's on me. Give me the Dodgers outright. That thing's done. I'll take the Dodgers to go up 3-1 on the Mets tonight.
And Spencer Rattler to throw an interception. So I've got Juan Soto over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. Over 7, Dodgers, Mets, and Spencer Rattler to throw an interception.
Okay, I have 2 questions for you guys.
Sure.
Okay.
The first is you said one of those start times was what, like 5:08?
5:08 first pitch.
5:09.
See, what's the over/under on 5:08?
They're pretty efficient about their start times.
Yeah, I mean, according to whose clock? Is that like the World Apple Clock? Right?
It's the same one they use for New
Speaking
Year's.
of clock, by the way, you still have time to get to see JMV to the El Emporium Castleton location, correct?
Love a good
Yes.
El
Where
Emporium.
he is going to be El
The
Emporium.
pizza at El Emporium is underrated. It's
Hermanaki
delicious.
wings, all
I know their
right.
wings are the selling point, but the pizza there is delightful.
Got time to get up there. John will be there from 3, starting at 3, of course, talking sports, and plenty of time to get up there and enjoy a cold one. Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient. Okay, I'd like to know if you guys get either of these 2 questions right. I've got money in my pocket for you. You ready?
Okay. I appreciate you
cannot
hiding the
look.
monitor. I appreciate it. Okay.
Let's say tonight Spencer Rattler, who is getting the start for New Orleans. He is the guy that started his career, I believe, at Oklahoma and then transferred to South Carolina, right?
Yes.
Kind of a gritty player. He's kind of a fun player to watch in college. If for some reason he goes down and the Saints have to go to their backup,
No idea.
who is it and where did he play in college?
Oh, son of a bleep. I know this because
No
he
clue.
actually played against Kansas City instead of, Jay Kaner, Fresno State.
Wow, look at the big brain on Eddie.
Well done, Eddie Garrison.
Thank you.
Too bad we didn't determine what the amount of money was going to be that I had burning a hole in my pocket.
It's okay.
I
Could be a
have,
nickel for
I
all I
have
care.
before me, I bought earlier this week, 1 Powerball and 1 Mega Million ticket. I have not checked the numbers on either. Do you want one of the 2 of them?
I'm good. I'm good, Jake.
Can you imagine if one
Eddie,
of these actually hits?
Look, I know we give him a hard time about the size of Eddie's head sometimes, but the ego stroke that he just got for pulling that question right,
That
he's
was
going to carry him
impressive.
for the rest of the day.
No, that was
he's good.
impressive.
You guys severely doubt my
No, I
intellect
don't.
sometimes.
I do not. I always defer to you for trivia questions. You're a very bright young lad, Eddie Garrison.
lad. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, Fresno
Mate.
State is actually kind of like overlooked in terms of its production of professional athletes. The number of players that you look at and like, wait a minute, Fresno State, really?
Paul George's all I have.
I mean, the Saints have 2 quarterbacks on their roster from Fresno State, right?
I've never been. We talk about it, how some people can rattle off Heisman winners and all that. I know you're capable of doing that. I'm not trying to provoke that right now, but
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
very bad at the college game. I'm very bad at where'd
Really?
they go to play. Yeah, I'm awful at it.
So if I name a player, you can't tell me where they went to college?
I don't hold that in my memory bank.
Patrick Mahomes.
Well, Texas Tech. Some guys, but they're Eddie. You could go through the whole lineup of the Colts, and he could probably tell you half the roster. I'm just not one of those people.
I used to be able to do that with, for sure, teams. I hate to say it, like the Super Bowl Colt team. I probably could do it on all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This time a little bit bigger struggle.
Yeah.
So if I name another Chief.
I mean, you'd have a coin flip chance. I just never, I separate the two for some reason in my brain.
Okay, if you were on Monday Night Football, if you were a player and you had to do your intro, how would you say it?
I mean,
you mean Sunday night? They don't do Monday night intros anymore.
Or Sunday night. Okay, Sunday Night Football.
Jimmy Cook, wide receiver, University of Notre Dame. I don't know. University of Indiana. Or Indiana University, yeah.
I mean, how would you say? Would you say Indiana University? Would you say Roncalli? Would you say School of Hard Knocks?
No, I would go college, yeah.
Eddie, how would you do it?
Yeah.
Eddie Garrison, lineman, Decatur Central.
So you would go the high school route?
Yep.
Okay.
We don't have many players make it to the NFL.
Are you in the camp
Same
of
for
people?
UND, I guess.
Are you in the camp of people that are just, and I understand this is Big Ten bias here, but fed up with the whole overemphasis of the Ohio State University? I know it's the shtick, but
from day one.
Come on, man.
From day one, it is absurd. Totally absurd, yes. But I thought it was kind of cool in the beginning when people would say, and I get it, if somebody wants to give the quote-unquote, as the kids say, shout out for their high school or something, I mean, it's kind of cool. But after a while, you're like, what college,
do you think anybody's ever gone grade school?
I think people have gone
probably.
township. I've heard township before.
Okay.
Lane Township, that kind of thing.
St. Jude Elementary? Am I giving a shout out there?
School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wakanda forever. I forget who did that.
I'd probably go with Beastwood Eagles.
Nice.
Jake Query, Beastwood Eagles.
Yeah, Jamal Adams, I'm the best in the nation. A couple of years ago.
You love the Beastwood.
I do like the Beastwood Eagles, baby. Undefeated 2 years in a row. They made a plaque. They misspelled my name. But it's still there for what that's worth. Eastwood in the area of Castleton. That's where John is. Ale Emporium. He's up next. We'll carry you home. We'll be with you tomorrow for a Feel Good Friday. Clarence for Dan joining us for Former Colt Friday. Kevin Bone will preview the game. And we'll talk about the fact that I'm going to go see Oregon shock the world tomorrow night. Thanks for listening to Quarry & Company.